This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Lauren Lester, the voice of Robin and Nightwing.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review.
Hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com.
And on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 328 of the DCAU Review. I'm Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. Cal, it's been a long, strange trip, but we have finally come to the end of the road, production order-wise, when it comes to the original 85 episodes of Batman the Animated Series. We classify New Batman Adventures as its own thing, despite it being collected as the fourth season of the series and DVDs later. So we are at the end of the rope, and we got a certain, doesn't exactly scream series finale, but it's certainly a memorable episode to talk about this week.
That's right, Liam. We are tackling Batgirl Returns, which features a starring performance from Barbara Gordon. And she's not alone. We get Robin and Catwoman and a couple of other series regulars. The thing that we don't have is Batman. Ironically, I was thinking about this. I was like, man, if the people that critiqued Batman Caped Crusader for not having enough Batman could take off those nostalgia goggles and just remember this episode that features zero actual screen time for Batman and one minimal dream sequence featuring the Dark Knight. But that doesn't take away, I don't think, from the storytelling for this episode. Yeah, it's been a strange trip, Liam. It's been took us 7 years to get through 85 episodes of this animated program. And ironically, despite having the longest run out of all of them, it's the one that we finished first somehow.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ironic now that you say it that way. Yeah, we like we said, we kind of knew pretty early on that we were going to jump around to the different shows rather than watch everything through in production order, just to kind of make it fun for ourselves and hopefully for our listeners. So, but yeah, it's a long time coming. New Batman adventures await us sometime down the line. But as you said, Cal, first we got to finish up with Batgirl Returns, and we'll get to our main four categories of plot, visuals, music, and voice acting in just a moment. But first, Cal, we need to do a little housekeeping and remind people that this show is sponsored by the Pod Tower YouTube channel. You can head to youtube.com/the Pod Tower right now and subscribe. And when you do that, you'll get not only our show, every episode that we do, but also the ongoing Jump on the Bat-Wagon and Intergang podcasts, plus some live stream archives, as well as other older DCAU podcasts that are not running anymore. So a lot of good content for you if you head to youtube.com/the Pod Tower and subscribe today. And before I get to the official IMDb synopsis, Cal, why don't you hit us with that air date?
That's right, Liam. This episode originally aired here in the United States on the Fox Kids programming block November the 12th. 1994, meaning we are just, ironically, this is all a lot of Alanis Morissette ironic happenings, by the way. It's not true irony, but ironically, we're just 2 months shy of the 30-year anniversary of this episode's debut here in the United States.
Yeah, it's like that line in the song. It's like watching a Batman cartoon and then meeting a man's beautiful wife, or whatever, that line. Anyway, we will get to the official IMDb synopsis for Batgirl Returns, which was written by Michael Reeves and Brian Stevens, directed by friend of the show Dan Reba, music by Harvey Cohen, and animation by Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. Batgirl, Catwoman, and Robin team up to investigate the theft of a valuable cat statuette. That's wrong. Robin is not teamed up with the other two. He's doing his own parallel investigation.
Also, I do appreciate, though, that they use the term cat statuette.
I do. That was nice. I do appreciate a little A little thesaurus checking to find a different word for statue.
Gonna say they broke out the thesaurus. They wanted to say, what can we call this other than a statue? Either that or somebody misspelled statue and spell check corrected it as statuette.
Could be. And here's your first action item for the week, listeners. Please tell us what the difference between statue and statuette is. Is it because it's little? Please explain.
Anyway,
it's
not that little though. It's like 15 inches tall.
Yeah, it's pretty sizable, but we'll get to that when we will begin breaking down the plot here. As we open, we get like a cold open to this one. Not really, because it happens after the title sequence, I guess. But we get this one little scene. We see a museum, which is displaying various items from the Han Dynasty, including this large jade cat statuette, as mentioned. And we see a silhouetted figure go in and steal that statue right out from under the glass case it's kept in. And very quickly from there, we cut to what we see as Batman gallivanting across the rooftops of Gotham. And he's quickly attacked by 3 mute villains who don't say anything, but attack him with some kind of over-the-top weaponry. Penguin has like a lightning gun for some reason. It's a dream, so I guess you can excuse it being a little more over the top. But yes, he's attacked by the Penguin, Two-Face, and Joker, seemingly. He's overmatched, but then Batgirl arrives to even the odds. She defeats them all single-handedly. And then, for people that don't like the quote-unquote retcon of Batman Beyond, good news, guys. It started much earlier than that.
Batgirl. Are you all right?
Yes. Thanks to you.
Barbara! Hey, Babs! Yo, Bookworm! You up there?
What is it, Dick?
All work and no play, you know? Come on, let's do a pizza run.
Love to, but I can't. If I don't ace these midterms, Dad says he'll throw me in jail. And with my dad, that's no idle threat.
Okay, catch you later.
As the end of Barbara's little dream sequence here is she's in the process of expressing, or she is in a romantic embrace with the Dark Knight. But one Dick Grayson interrupts her slumber, and thus we don't get to see we'd have to wait till the Killing Joke movie several years later until we finally got to see that kiss on screen. But yeah, this is deep in the DNA of this version of Batman and Batgirl, whether folks like that or not. It was not a surprise left turn that they took later on in the DCAU. Just as a point of record, I feel like I have to mention that.
I would also like to point out, and I don't know, forgive me, I don't know if this somehow redeems Batman in the situation, but this pretty well establishes Batgirl as the one who is the aggressor in this portion. Like, she's the one who's extremely interested in him. She's dreaming about him. There's the conversation that happens later on in the Beware the Bat, or the Mystery of the Batwoman movie. It's pretty well established here. This isn't a grooming thing.
No, it is not.
It is.
You can still say that it's like unhealthy or
yes,
not ideal.
Yeah, but I feel like the argument against it is there's this power dynamic, and Batman's a creep and whatever. Yes. And I'm siding with you and saying it's not doesn't feel good. It's not warm and fuzzy.
Right.
However,
way, I don't think it was supposed to.
Exactly.
It's the other point. Like,
that's the other thing that
when we find out that they did actually have a relationship, it's not like, oh, they were star-crossed. It's not like him and Talia. It's not like him and in Catwoman even. Like, it was like, yeah, they had a tryst. They were two adults, and yeah, sometimes adults get romantically involved with other adults they shouldn't get involved with. So it's like, I have never had like the full body cringe reaction to this that I think a lot of DCAU fans, not that you're not allowed to have that opinion, but I just like to point this out because I knew this was coming in this episode. I'm like, just to be clear, Barbara had it at least in the back of her mind, at least in her subconscious, as early as her third appearance in the DCAU, or fourth appearance, I guess, because she had appeared out of costume a few times. But yes, as her romantic daydream is interrupted by Dick Grayson shouting outside her college dorm window, seeing if she wants to go for pizza. This is the first episode we've established that they know each other, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
There's probably some Batman Adventures comics that have already come out, but I don't think they've
there's nothing
interact in the previous ones.
Yeah, there's nothing that would have previously led to this because she's only appeared twice, and in one of those episodes, Robin isn't in that episode, and in the second one, he.
Oh, wait a minute. He's in the hospital room with her, and I am the Knight.
Oh, good call.
Okay, so they do know each other.
All right, good call.
Fair enough. Anyway, I cut myself off. So if you were typing that comment to let me know I was wrong, too bad. I corrected myself first. But anyway, yes. So Dick Grayson invites her out, but she said that she's got to focus on her studies with midterms coming up. She's a little bit stressed out. And just at that moment, a newspaper is slid under her door. And it alerts her that the Jade Cat statuette has been stolen. And so she's going to, she decides to take a little break after all, but not as Barbara Gordon, as Batgirl. And we cut back to that museum where we see Catwoman arriving on the scene, seemingly returning to the scene of her own crime. And Batgirl thinks much the same, as they have a little bit of a back and forth. And Catwoman tries to sort of smarten her up and points out that the tactics used to steal this statue were not her style, as there's a acid that was used to eat through the alarm wire. And as Catwoman points out, she'd do that claw thing where she makes a circle out of the glass.
Look, Batgirl, is it? I'm just trying to find out who took the Jade Cat statue. It's an art treasure. It belongs to the world.
Right. Pull the other one.
Look.
Huh? Looks like the alarm cord was eaten through with acid, like the locks on the skylight. So?
That's not my style. No finesse. See?
Okay. If you're innocent, come down to police headquarters with me and tell them your story.
That's also not my style.
One way or another, you're coming with me.
Bats are just mice with wings, little girl.
Robin!
Just came to investigate the robbery. I didn't expect a convention.
At that moment, Batgirl demands that she come with her to police headquarters to tell her side of the story, which I think is pretty funny. And Robin arrives and complicates things a little bit. There's a little bit of a kerfluffle. Catwoman tries to escape. Robin gives chase and gets wrapped up in a weird net thing. Where did Catwoman get these?
I don't know where she was keeping it on her body, if that's what you're asking. I mean, I guess she just went to like the army surplus store or something and got like a net. But as far as
it folds up, it must fold up real small,
real tiny, because that belt is. I don't think that belt's holding anything.
Yeah, I don't either. Although Batgirl also holds like batarangs, and Batgirl's on her little belt as well. So
true.
Who knows? Who knows how it works? But
comic book magic,
exactly. But so that allows Catwoman to escape as she ties up Robin and flips off of the building. And Batgirl tries to explain to Robin that he rushed in without listening, and that she doesn't think Catwoman's responsible for this. They have a little bit of a tiff here. They're very argumentative with each other, sort of more representing their first interaction that they had when he first meets her.
A clear homage to the Two-Face episode.
Yes, when they first
Shadow
meet
of the Bat.
Yes, they're very, very much very dismissive and argumentative with each other. And he kind of blows her off and tells her to get lost and stay out of his way.
Well, you were a lot of help.
I tried to tell you she didn't steal the Jade Cat.
How do you know that?
I just know, that's all.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Psychic. And you call yourself a crime fighter.
If you listened instead of just barging in...
Just don't get in my way again, okay?
Dork.
But the next day, we see Batgirl in her Barbara back in her gymnastics class, and she sees a note left on the bulletin board of the college, referring to how Catwoman had referred to her in the previous scene as a rodent with wings, and so at that point, our mouse with wings, I believe, and she sees that there's a note to meet down at the docks that night. And so, as Batgirl, she rides up to meet with Catwoman and see what the femme fatale has to offer her.
That's right. Yeah, I just wonder. There's no explanation given. I guess you could draw your own mental gymnastics, pun intended, for how Catwoman knew that Barbara would see that, not knowing her secret identity. So you can either infer that she knows her identity and just isn't decided to keep it a secret, or she just assumed that based on her age, athleticism, that she must go to Gotham University. So who knows though? But yes,
yeah, it's weird because it's this is New York, right? We've established probably more than one college. Did she go around to every college
and drop a cat
in Gotham City,
a die-cat cut card, and just paste them? She just pasted them.
Mavis doing this? Is that Mavis's job to just, all right, you're going to cut out 800 different cat things with this and then go pin them up around town all day. Hop to it, Mavis.
Also, no one else bothered to pick one up. If that's the case, no one else picked them up. Because it's just Batgirl that shows up. Either that, or if somebody else did see it, they're like, I'm not showing up to this weird note on the dock. Not out of curiosity, didn't kill me. Absolutely not. Yes, but Barbara gets the note, and she does indeed show up. So if Catwoman had an inkling that it was Barbara and was watching her, she certainly got her identity confirmed at that point. The fact that she didn't show up. So not necessarily the smartest thing to just show up and announce herself, but Batgirl does show up. Catwoman is there, and she convinces Batgirl to team up with her in order to investigate. She at the Bayshore Pier, where they end up meeting, she offers a truce, says that they need to team up together, and that all of this is done with the bargaining chip that Barbara says that Batgirl says that she's willing to team up with Catwoman as long as she promises if she ends up lying, she has to give herself up at the end. It's a very innocent truce. All right, but if you lie to me, you have to go to jail, okay?
If this is a trick, Catwoman.
No trick. I just wanted to tell you how impressed I was with you last night. You're smart, and you're fast. I thought maybe you'd like to work together. After all, against the two of us, whoever took the Jade Cat doesn't stand a chance.
Okay, on one condition. If you're lying to me and I find out, you'll give yourself up.
Deal.
Because Catwoman is still maintaining her innocence and that she's interested in bringing whoever this person is to justice because of them stealing the statue, and that she doesn't have any personal interest in the statue. So Catwoman and Batgirl make their way to the stacked deck, which is, as Batgirl says, the seediest dive bar in town. In the meantime, we do get a mini scene explaining why there is no Batman in this episode, as Robin calls Bruce up on the phone, and we hear more about this mysterious Wayne Tech merger that was previously mentioned in the Lockup episode. We got to ask Dan, once we get him back on the show, if he remembers if that was alluding to something specific, if they had a plan for what that was going to be, or if it's just left up to our headcanon to make that the Wayne Enterprises or Wayne Tech merger with LexCorp.
So, you won't be back in time to help me look for your old flame Catwoman?
Sorry, Dick, you're on your own. This Wayne Corp merger is vital for the European common market.
Okay, sure. After all, who needs you when I've got Batgirl to help me?
Watch out for Selina. She likes to play mind games. I hope Batgirl isn't in over her head.
Either way, Batman will not be in this episode because he's in Paris, France. So
He's got
Robin,
a nice tuxedo on. Never mind.
Right.
We'll talk about that in visuals. The Bruce Wayne fit check is back. Spoiler alert.
it's all up to Robin in order to do this, despite his teasing that his old flame Catwoman was up to no good. He lays it on Robin in order to take care of everything at that point. Back at the stack deck, we see both Catwoman and Batgirl walking in to a very misogynistic dive bar, complete with cat calls and insinuating, I don't know what, terrible pickup lines from its patrons. A fight immediately breaks out when Catwoman decides to take care of one of these rather rude barmates, and just as it looks like people are starting to clear out, her eye is drawn to one particular guy that she makes sure he stays where he's put by tying him to the chair with her whip. And she identifies this guy as the chemist, who is known as he's able to identify all chemicals or something like that. He's apparently well known in the Gotham underworld for being able to work with different type of chemical interactions. So she and Batgirl get right to questioning him.
You stay.
I got nothing to say to you, lady.
Didn't anyone ever tell you it's impolite to walk out on a lady?
This is from the Jade Cat job. Residue of the acid used on the locks.
That's nice. Why tell me?
They call you the chemist. You know every acid, explosive, and poison by its first name. Any idea where this was made?
Basic corrosive compound. Probably a local manufacturer like Axis, Phoenix, or...
Hey!
He takes off running out of fear. At this point, everything breaks down. A huge bar fight breaks out. Batgirl and Catwoman stuck in the middle. Fisticuffs occurs. And then Batgirl and Catwoman make their escape through the front glass, jumping on a motorcycle to make their escape, riding tandem. Just as the police arrive, the police give chase to them. They're able to make an escape. In the discussion during their escape, Catwoman reveals what she learned from his reaction, the chemist's reaction and fear, stating that the only person that she believes could have been responsible for the acid would have been none other than Roland Daggett, who is one of the other local chemists, probably the only one that he didn't happen to mention in that in his little rundown of who it could be responsible for. We get a little bit of an exposition dump from both Batgirl and Catwoman, mentioning, of course, that Daggett was responsible for the Renew You cream that turned Matt Hagen into Clayface, as well as, who could forget, Liam, the Cat Scratch Fever episode, a legendary episode in the annals of the DCAU review.
Oh yeah.
Oof, boy,
Brutal.
Yeah, rough.
One of the worst.
Yeah, so visually, I don't remember how we felt about the story, but definitely visually, one of if not the lowest rated episodes of all time, visually. But that in that one, Daggett was responsible for this virus that infected her cat Isis, and having bit Catwoman was also infected with this. So she holds a grudge against Daggett as she reveals that she feels he's responsible for nearly killing her and her cat. So this leads this duo to the a abandoned factory, chemical factory of Daggett's. As they break in, they go to the safe, they find it, and wouldn't you know, just as Catwoman cracks the safe, she finds the stolen statue, much to her surprise and enjoyment. Just as they are about to leave with said statue, though, they're interrupted as Daggett, with two of his men, are there waiting, holding them at gunpoint, telling them that they've reached the end of the line. Despite Daggett's intention to do away with them, Catwoman, I love this. She doesn't pull punches. She's very upset. Daggett explains why he's after the statue. It's because he's broke. After his last run-in with Batman, he was broke, so he needs to fence this item to fetch him a large amount of money. Plus, he knew that it would get under Catwoman's skin, so he's got a personal vendetta, and that she would be the one that number one suspect based on the type of statue that it was stolen. So, win-win for him. Batgirl suggests as he leads them over a bridge over a pair of giant vats of acid, if he's going to hang them over and wait and for the acid to dissolve a rope and watch them drop in, which I love because it's very much a meta commentary on what you would assume that a supervillain would do. And he just says, "No, I'm going to shoot you and throw you in the barrels of acid," which is great.
I was going to say it's exactly what would happen on like the Adam West shows, like specifically.
Sure.
It feels like that's grade A.
You tie him up,
comic book.
You leave the room. You take your statue. You let them die because you don't need to watch them. Surely your plan is perfect and nothing could go wrong. Your hero will never escape. You don't need to be there to confirm that. So, but no, Daggett's plan is to shoot them dead right there. To throw their bodies into vats of acid. And just as it looks like that things are about done for both Catwoman and Batgirl, thankfully, a Boy Wonder appears.
Why take the Jade Cat, Daggett? There were other, more valuable treasures.
Because it's exactly what you would have taken. Also, I need the money to start over. My legal fees after my last encounter with Batman left me broke. The money from this statuette will set me up quite nicely somewhere else, while the cops look for a certain feline thief.
So what are you going to do? Leave us hanging over one of these vats with acid burning through the rope?
Yeah, there's one thing I've learned over the years. It's that you crime-fighting types are very resourceful. So I'll just have my men shoot you and throw your bodies into the vats. There's still enough acid residue in them to destroy the evidence.
That's right. Robin comes swinging in and knocks down two of the thugs. Batgirl, while her hands are still tied, is able to disarm the third. And in the commotion, Daggett takes off running with the statue, and Catwoman follows him. And she's able to get out of her confines thanks to her claws. And so Batgirl and Robin continue to fight off the thugs, as it's mentioned that Robin found them because he's not the only one with a crime lab. Is that what he said?
Yep.
Or the chemical lab or something like that. So they do. There is like one little scene where you see Robin looking at the aftermath of the stacked deck stuff. So I guess he was on their trail. He's just a little step behind. But yes, as they take care of things, Catwoman gets face to face with Daggett once again. They have a pretty physical confrontation. She disarms him and seemingly is just going to take the statue and leave. But he grabs some sort of metal bar off the wall and takes a swing at her. So she knocks him off. His ankle gets caught into the chains that are hanging there, and he goes ironically dangling over a vat of acid, as we previously chatted about,
by a chain, but not a rope.
That's
so
right. And
couldn't have just left him to die that way.
Right. And Catwoman's not really seemingly going to just let him dangle there either, as she this is maybe open to interpretation. You could argue that she just does this because she knows Batgirl's going to stop her, is going to stop him from falling, so she's not actually going to trying to kill him. But this is still kind of attempted murder, right? She unhooks the chain from the wall and lets it begin to run out as he starts to slowly fall towards, and then rapidly fall towards the vat of acid. Batgirl runs in at the last moment and grabs hold of the chain to save the day, and Robin helps her secure it. And while Robin deals with Daggett and the thugs, Batgirl goes on the chase after Catwoman. They have another little physical altercation, and then we get the Darth Vader speech from Catwoman here. She offers Batgirl to join her that they could rule Gotham through thievery. Not even Batman could stop them, and not even that senile fool Commissioner Gordon could stop him, which is of course the wrong thing to say. So I guess she doesn't know that Batgirl's Barbara Gordon because she makes fun of her dad.
Oh, that's true.
Or she's just stupid, which is also possible. But regardless, that irks Batgirl a little bit, and she reminds Catwoman of their agreement that if she lied to her at any point, that she would agree to give herself up. At that moment, we see one of the Gotham police arriving on the top of the building as well, climbing up a ladder and pulling his gun. So Catwoman somewhat reluctantly agrees to give back the statue and let herself be taken by the police. And as we see her being loaded into the back of the seat, she makes one sort of final comment to Batgirl saying that she should have taken her up on the offer. And as Batgirl and Robin sort of begin to decompress from all of the adventures, we hear a little commotion up the street, and we see the two cops getting knocked out of the cop car, and Catwoman in the driver's seat now, saying that while she did promise to let the cops take her, she never said how far. And she goes speeding off, and Robin attempts to give chase, but Batgirl grabs a hold of his cape and says, nah, just let it go. And that's the end of the episode.
You should have said yes.
If I had, I'd be a rat with wings.
I knew you had Catwoman on a leash all along.
You're a lousy liar, but thanks for trying.
Are you guys all right?
Yeah.
I said I'd let them take me, but I didn't say how far.
It's okay. There'll be another time.
Crime doesn't pay. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure what. So we can from here, Cal, get into our thoughts and scores on the plot. Really like the element of like a Batgirl, Catwoman, Thelma and Louise team up.
Mm-hmm.
And which is that's probably not accurate because they're not doing anything criminal. They do have the one chase scene where they're running from the cops, which is fun. But like the idea of Batgirl being a little naive to this whole game still.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the Catwoman kind of seemingly having her wrapped around her finger the whole time in a different way than we've seen her do to Batman in the past, because obviously there's not a romantic component here. So she's just kind of buttering her up. She's like, you're really smart. You really know all of your crime. Like you really study this stuff, huh? You clearly are like well equipped to handle this. She just kind of like butters her up, and then, you know, the almost very childlike like promises to turn herself in if she lies.
Right.
It's like, so it takes on that interesting. I think that's kind of interesting. The roundabout way that we get to they go to a bar and the chemist is scared, and because the chemist is scared, that means Catwoman knows that the only person it could be is Roland Daggett.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's a little bit of a leap.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that like, and then it feels like there's a few scenes where things just happen because the next scene has to happen. The same thing with Catwoman leaving a note on the bulletin board outside of the gym.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so I think there's some it's a little clunky of how we get scene to scene in this episode. That's like a structural issue, I guess. But overall, I generally like the idea of Batgirl kind of learning not to trust a super thief and ultimately kind of triumphing because she sticks to her guns, even though she's maybe a little bit naive and lets herself get taken advantage of along the way. Like she kind of snaps out of it at the last minute. So I think there's some fun here, but I think it's kind of the structure of it is a little bit clunky.
Yeah, I'm with you. Some of the logic, if you think too hard about it, doesn't work out. the end scene, I think, is pretty indicative of all of the entire episode. It's like, oh, Catwoman is escaping. Let's just let her escape. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
What? Why? Why are we letting her escape? She almost killed somebody, first of all. She tried to steal the statue and get away with it, and only was stopped because Batgirl pursued her. She was combative with Robin. Like, I think if you think about it too hard, the story itself begins to unravel. On the surface, it's a fun 22 minutes. It's certainly paced well. I don't feel like it drags at any point. It's not very. There's not a ton of classic action other than the fight that happens in the middle at the stacked deck, and then at the end, before the finale, of course, before the ending. But it's interesting enough. Like, there's a story that you're following. I think it's just you have to suspend disbelief just a bit too much that all of this stuff falls into place, in order for the story to actually happen, which is okay. Yeah. Some really great comic books, you have to suspend disbelief to do that. But right. As far as looking at this with a critical eye, this particular story, does it stand up? I was looking at our writers for the episode, Michael Reeves and Brent Stevens, who are credited with the writing for this episode. It's like they wrote some pretty decent episodes, so it's not like this was the only episode that they wrote. But as we talked about last week with friend of the show Kevin Altieri, this was a time where scripts and stories they were getting, they weren't really thrilled with a lot of them. They were fighting and pushing back against directives to make it more kid-like and light and bubbly. And while this one I wouldn't classify as light or bubbly or like too kiddie, because you're dealing with like a villain that at the end is going to murder your hero and your accomplice.
Yeah. That of Acid is pretty like super friends. Like,
agreed. And his motivation, well, I'm broke, so I have to steal the statue to sell it. It's like, oh, right. All right.
Yeah, the idea that he stole a cat statue because he knew everyone would blame Catwoman is kind of clever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's bits. This is also, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't see this on the DCAU wiki, but there's in the Batman animated book by Chip Kidd and Paul Dini, there's a story in there when they're talking about the Robin mandate and how Robin had to be in every episode for these last these Adventures in Batman and Robin episodes. There's a story. This is I don't know if they've said this became that or that became this, but there was a story that was like Catwoman and Black Canary that they wanted to do, that they were like interrupted mid-pitch with the Fox Kids rep saying, okay, so where's Robin in this?
Right.
And them asking if they could omit it just this once, and Fox saying no.
Right.
So my guess is that this also went through some massaging. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe it's parallel thought, and that's not this episode at all, as origins. But I feel like this wasn't, because Robin feels pretty tacked on as far as
for sure
his contributions to this episode. And obviously there's no Batman at all. So I mean, if it maybe it could have been something else, but as it is, it feels a little clunky. Even the start, where, now that we're really nitpicking, at the start right before Robin comes into the museum, Catwoman's like, I'm gonna leave because I need to find out who took this statue, and I'm not going to the cops. Batgirl's like, you're coming with me no matter what. And then Robin shows up trying to subdue Catwoman, and immediately Batgirl's like, no, wait, she didn't do it. And it's like, well, you were just trying to capture her even though you knew she didn't do it. So why is it bad that he's trying to capture her now?
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I'm nitpicking now. But yes, the ending where they just let her go is also, as you mentioned, kind of unsatisfying. Like I said, she did just almost kill Roland Daggett, whether she thought Batgirl could catch the chain or not. I think that's still attempted murder. So the fact that they're just like, well, she'll be back. She'll be back one day. We'll have another shot at her one day. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if that's how that should work.
You could literally like you,
or just don't have them standing there. Have them, hear about it on the, like they show earlier. Robin's, listening to a police band,
right?
A police band. So just have him like hear it on the radio, like, oh, all units, Catwoman has escaped, and then you can cut to Catwoman saying, like, I never said how far I'd let them take me, and then she drives off into the sunset, and that's the end, as opposed to it being that they're literally just like they just stand there and let her drive away. I don't know. I feel like they could have structured this a little bit better or differently.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the tale of two stories here as we're talking about it. Like, it is a fun episode. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy from it. There's some good banter. There's some good action. There's some good stuff. It's a fun story overall. But when you start to kind of pull at it and look at it under a critical lens, it's like, some of the story itself has little to no logic. It feels like things just happen so that the story could happen. The ending isn't as satisfying as it probably could have been if you had just written it just a little differently, and it sort of makes your heroes look like buffoons at the end. So, I went with a middle of the road 5 out of 10 for my plot for that reason. Again, I think this is one of those episodes where the score is going to reflect middle of the road. I liked the episode. I enjoyed it. This is another one that we had recorded on tape. So it's one that we saw pretty frequently in our childhood growing up, from my recollection, but I hadn't seen it in quite some time, so there were still some elements that I had forgotten, or some lines that were not as memorable that I recalled while I'm watching it. So I enjoyed it, but it's just I think critically the story itself just not as good as it could have been, and maybe lends a little bit to that narrative that ideas were running thin for this and being handcuffed by Robin maybe could have prevented a better story and feeling less uneven, I think, if you just maybe include the two girls, or maybe if you did have the Black Canary story added in or something like that. But yeah, so 5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score of 5 out of 10. Can't really add too much onto what we've already talked about here. I love the idea of this as a team up, and as, again, sort of Batgirl, like learning how mean everyone is for the first time is kind of a fun deal. Like how kind of naive she is, even like some of her dialogue at the start. We'll talk about that in voice acting later too. She's so like rigid and self-assured and so righteous. So I think there's some fun there, and then the actual team up part where they're investigating and they go to the club is really fun. That's the club from Almost Got 'Em, right? Stack Deck.
Yes, it comes back again several different times. It's a series mainstay.
That's right. I think it even came back in the Adventures Continue comics not too long ago.
So it did. Yep, I believe it was included there. Speaking of just two things that I was actually disappointed that the DCAU wiki, which frequently just adds nonsense for the sake of adding nonsense, it feels at times. One, we get the line at the end where Batgirl says if she had just sided with Catwoman, she would be a rat with wings. Of course, that line, very famous from the recent Matt Reeves Batman, El Rata Alada. So pretty funny to hear that here. I mean, that's not where this originated, obviously. My bats being called rats with wings didn't originate with Batman, but just funny that that has become that became such an important part of that particular movie, a plot point. The other thing is the chemist mentions Axis Chemicals as one of the potential places that could have originated, and that was the name of the chemical company that supplanted. It was used instead of Ace Chemicals in the '89 Tim Burton Batman movie for where the Joker's origin happened, was Axis Chemicals. So a little shout out to that movie that obviously is in the DNA. It's interesting. It's in the DNA from the beginning to the end of this original 85 episode run here. Axis Chemicals getting a nice little nod there.
Yeah, it's a good call. I always forget that bit of the name change in there. But yeah, that's a great little bit as you mentioned. There's a few little things across the series. I think they call Joker Jack Napier in one episode. Like there's a couple little Burtonverse shouts throughout this series for sure. And this one is no exception. But from there, we will move on to visuals and animation. Once again, episode directed by friend of the show, Dan Reba, animation by Dong Yang. I think generally everybody's on model. Batgirl's head seems super round to me.
He is very expressive.
She's very squishy. I feel like she has like a almost like an anime face, like very round. Maybe it's because of the way like she kind of has like a small head and like pointed nose, especially when it's in the cowl. Like I don't notice that with Barbara so much, but when she's in the cowl, her head just looks so tiny. And yeah, she has these big. Maybe that's also the part. She has like colored eyes, and a lot of she has like blue eyes, and yeah, she's just very, very expressive in a way that, and maybe it's also because, unlike with Batman and Robin, we see her eyes the whole time. She's not hiding behind the blank white domino mask or the bat cowl. So yeah, but I was just like, wow, she's super. This is funny to say. She's really cartoony. Like all her expressions are so cartoony, and yeah, I was just like, wow, she's got a really round, expressive face.
Yep. Yeah, she emotes a lot in the episode. It at times, especially in that opening sequence, and I guess you can chalk it up to being, I think it's the dream sequence. But there's times, especially when Barbara wakes up at the desk, I feel like she was also just always like very over the top. The way that her expressions, her smile was always really big. Her eyes are really big, which is, a departure from a lot of the other characters in the show. So she's kind of, I guess maybe because they wanted her to look a little bit younger, or to kind of come across as being the younger character. Also just, I guess, being a female versus a lot of the male dominated characters that we typically saw for the models. It really gets that across that she's a younger character, I guess. Speaking of that opening sequence, Liam, some wonky animation to say the least. I mean, I guess you can chalk it up to being a dream, so it doesn't need to be as realistic. But oh boy, Joker, Two-Face, and Penguin all look really weird and off model.
Yes.
For the entire thing. They look like if somebody was like, went to a professional artist and they're like, all right, draw these characters in the Batman, the animated series style, but they're just drawing them from memory. It's like, all right, I think this is kind of what they look like. It's like close, but there's just something off about all of them in the way that they move and the way that they look. Again, I guess you can explain it away as, being just a fantastical sequence with it being a dream. But I did appreciate that it wraps up with what I described as a romance novel embrace between Batman and Batgirl, as it looks like if somebody had created a Batman and Batgirl romance novel, this is what the cover of it would look like. The capes are flying around them. He's like looking longingly in her eyes. Her hair is like real exaggerated and down like the middle of her back.
Long. Yeah.
It's like flying in the wind. I was like, that's pretty funny.
That's a good bit.
Did like that.
Yeah, I think that sequence, the bit where, again, this is still the dream sequence, but where when Batman is sort of beaten up by all the villains, and then they kind of all look off to the side, and you see just the moon, and then Batgirl comes flipping into the shot. I think that looks really good, really fluid. I think as far as like the actual, as far as everyone moving, I think this feels pretty loose and fun for the most part. I really like, there's a lot of, again, speaking of stuff, I feel like from that we would see earlier in the show's run, but I don't feel like we get it as much in these back 20 episodes or so. There's like a lot of silhouette used that feels very Fleischer when they're sneaking around in the warehouse with all the lights off. until she turns the flashlight on. They're completely silhouetted, and once again, because they don't have the white eyes, you don't even have the eyes, so they're just completely backlit with very little very little silhouette. And then when they grab the statue out of the safe and Daggett and his two men show up, they're completely in shadow almost.
Yep.
Covering their faces as well. And then Daggett kind of has this dramatic step out of the shadows for his final line before the act break. So I think some really kind of fun Fleischery stuff in this, different than what we talked about last week with Kevin Altieri with the robots stuff. This one just going back to those like real dark, some of those real dark scenes is real dark, palette wise dark. And the heavy shadow and heavy silhouette use I thought was pretty neat and a fun point of difference than a lot of these later Adventures of Batman and Robin fun wacky adventure episodes.
Yeah, I liked the stacked deck scene, also the fight that happens there. That thought that was done really well. Speaking of the use of shadows that you mentioned, it feels like it's probably a trick where you don't have to use a whole bunch of character models and do a whole bunch of actual deep. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy to do that at all. I wouldn't even pretend to imagine that it would be an easy thing to animate, but it does simplify it in a way that feels like a good use of cheating. Like, you don't have to, it's not a bunch of color. It's not a bunch of figuring out what people are wearing from scene to scene. It's a bunch of silhouettes kind of running around and hitting each other. And we talked about it way back when we did the Almost Got Him episode with best friend of the show, Monica Cabina, but you're able to create a rather large volume, make the entire place feel a lot bigger without spending that time or distracting the audience by kind of filling in the backgrounds with some of those silhouettes and shadows and stuff like that. So that entire fight sequence is a lot of fun. Characters flipping in and out of shadow, some fisticuffs with the breaking through the glass, the momentary, sort of break in the action followed by an immediate just breakdown of everything. It really comes across really, really a fun animated scene. And I think the DCAU wiki mentions that a pretty famous animator that was responsible for Aeon Flux and also did some of the stuff in the critically acclaimed Animatrix, Peter Chung, was uncredited as an animator for that sequence. So pretty awesome. Somebody that clearly has a recognizable name in the industry was responsible for creating a sequence that it ended up translating really well, I felt, on screen. I had also mentioned the reveal of Daggett, the way that's used with one of the guys is just carrying like a flashlight. So it like blinds the screen initially, and then you kind of see the shadows cast across. I really like that. Did we talk about Roland Daggett? I'm sure we probably have, but Roland Daggett being based on Norman Osborn sort of looking character. Because of the influence that those Spider-Man comics, those early Spider-Man comics had, the Ditko era had on our show's creators, that they created Daggett as a stand-in for that character. And that's why he has the red hair and the slick back look and all that. I'm sure we probably tackled that on his first episode, but good to see him back. Good to see him, even if it's his final appearance. That would have been one that I would have liked to have seen make a comeback at some point in the new Batman Adventures. They kind of stayed away from most of the gangsters once they do the transition, with the exception of a few, but you really don't get as much of that sort of mob boss mentality for the new Batman Adventures. So I think that would have been interesting to see some of those characters, or maybe in a tie-in comic if it had ever come up. So good to see him. As far as the final fight scene, as we mentioned, it's kind of there is some fast action that happens between once Robin shows up between the bad guys, and then really there's some tension built with, is Batgirl gonna be able to hold on to Daggett, and then the following chase sequence. I love when Catwoman jumps across the roof. It kind of hangs there for a second. You see it kind of almost moves in slow motion as Batgirl throws the bola that ties her legs up. And then it's a very similar reaction as the statue goes up in the air and Batgirl bobbles it, but ends up catching it. So speaking of Saturday morning cartoons, that was a pretty funny bit there.
Yeah.
With her, is she gonna drop it? So yeah, I would say overall it's, there are points that are interesting. The chase sequence is good too, even though it's very brief with Batgirl and Catwoman riding in tandem on the motorcycle as it leaps over the giant break in the bridge. Seems to be always a bridge under construction in Gotham, or that when there's a motorcycle chase involved, doesn't
well,
there?
Every other week a warehouse explodes or something, so that's where all the city funding goes.
Good point. Yep.
So they keep getting that project interrupted by
infrastructure.
The budget keeps getting taken up by having to rebuild a toy factory that's in the middle of town or whatever.
Infrastructure budget is the first one to get cut. Too funny. But yeah, so it looks okay. As we said, there's some things that are a little bit off model or a little bit wonky looking at times. Is it time to bring back the Bruce fit suit of the week as we get another look for Bruce Wayne here in this week's episode?
Let's do it. Yes, very excited. He's in like what appears to be a tux, but he's got like a long black overcoat with the collar popped.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just chilling in his hotel room overlooking. In case you were confused where he was, he's looking out at the Eiffel Tower. So he's just in his hotel room alone in a tuxedo with a big overcoat on. I guess he's about to leave to go finalize this merger. I like this as a Bruce fit. This is not as good as like the khaki suit from Avatar or anything. It's not a Hall of Fame Bruce Wayne fit, but it's a pretty solid alternative to the brown and yellow.
Agreed. Yeah. It's a solid entry into the Bruce Fit Hall of Fame.
Agreed. But yeah, for everything we've talked about here, I ended up giving visuals and animation a 7 out of 10. I think it's good. Like I said, I think the super expressive nature of Batgirl takes me out of it, and maybe that sequence with the villains at the start as well that you pointed out. Like, yeah, they look weird. They look really weird in that scene. I don't understand why. But otherwise, I think there's some really, really good stuff. I think, like I said, the animation itself feels pretty fluid. The chase sequence with the cops, as you mentioned on the motorcycle, is fun. Ramen doesn't do a lot, but he looks cool for most of the episode because it's always just him swinging through.
Sure.
So some good little I think acting bits there. And then you already mentioned, I think, yeah, maybe the piece de resistance is the romance novel cover with the hair and his cape swelling around her and all that. Like it's a very over dramatic on purpose visual, which is pretty funny. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Went 1 point lower, just a 6 out of 10 for me. As I think that opening sequence felt a little rough. It did shape up pretty quickly once Catwoman shows up. It seemed like things cleared up a little bit. And as I said, there's a couple of sequences that are certainly interesting and a couple of quick visuals. But overall, just kind of middle of the road. Better than average, though, 6 out of 10.
And from there, Cal, we will move on to our third category, which, of course, is the music. This week, music by Harvey Cohen, of course, under the supervision of the great Shirley Walker. This is fun in that it's a lot of Batgirl theme. It's a little quite a bit of Catwoman theme. I think maybe we hear the Catwoman theme more than the Batgirl theme, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
They play that up. I was waiting for when they got to the stacked deck. I feel like I was waiting for like a jazzy fight. We don't really get that, but it's I think it's pretty dramatic. I think the bit at the end when they're being about to be thrown into the vat, there's some good dramatic music there, and then it kind of builds. There's a moment, I don't know if we talked about in visuals, where when Daggett's sort of trying to run from Catwoman, he sees her shadow coming down the stairs and he kind of starts firing the gun and then the camera kind of pans up to see that she's walking on the catwalk above him, and the Catwoman theme kind of comes in a little bit as the camera pans up. So I think they do some fun bits with the character themes this week.
Yeah, it was nice to hear the Batgirl. I mean, the Batgirl theme is the first thing that you hear is Batman's getting the tar beat out of him. Then Batgirl shows up, and you get the triumphant return of arguably probably one of the top 5 themes in the entire original run. It's just so good. Like it just screams heroic badass. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's a perfect theme. And those horns come in, and you get the pace picked up with the percussion and things. It just gets your heart racing. Like it's really good. So yeah, that being played there, and then I think it maybe comes in one more time in the middle, and then once again at the end. So we get at least 2, if not 3, entries for the Batgirl theme. Yeah, as you mentioned, the Catwoman theme really is the dominant one. It seems, both in seems when she's when they're in hot pursuit of her, that's typically the theme that plays, which is welcome also. We've talked about it a lot. Anytime we veer outside of the DCAU, or even in some of the more later in some of the later episodes where the music dynamic sort of changed a little bit, it's refreshing to go back to these and hear that, and you associate that character with that song for that reason. And then when they're on screen and it plays, you're like, oh yeah, this is the character. Like this is also part of who this character is this theme. And regardless of whether it's played in a minor key or a major key, or if it's sped up or if it's slowed down, like that also plays into the emotion of, what's happening on screen, or what the character is going through. So, yeah, anytime we get the opportunity we do give the late great Shirley Walker praise. But yeah, it was nice to hear Mr. Cohen return once again and do bring these iconic themes back and rely on them so fairly heavily. I didn't have a ton of other musical notes outside of those, other than the main themes. As you mentioned, the fight sequence is punctuated with its own theme, and then we have some others that are kind of sprinkled throughout. But I think solely based on the major themes that we get here from our anti-hero and our hero for the episode, I ended up giving music a very strong 9 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I actually I gave it the same score. I think I think between the Batgirl theme and the Catwoman theme, which dominate so much of this, those are just, I think, 2 of the best pieces of music this series ever produced. So,
Undoubtedly.
And that's high praise from all the great work that Shirley Walker and the rest of the composers on this show did. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And that's reflected in us both giving it a 9. And from there, Cal, we will move to our final category of the day, which is, of course, voice acting. Not a huge cast to talk about, but quite a few returning guest stars this week.
That is right, Liam. So we might as well go ahead and discuss those. The first one that we'll mention that gets a name check, Frank Welker gets a credit here for playing Isis, but I did not spot Isis in this episode. So unless it was very quick, it's not at the beginning of the episode. Unless there's like a scene, I don't remember her appearing at any point. So, regardless, Frank Welker, voicing every animal from Scooby-Doo to whoever else you could possibly think of. He's the animal guy. So he gets a credit regardless if he showed up in this episode or not. Give him a credit. Why not?
There you go.
Also making an appearance, Scott Valentine, who plays the chemist in this particular episode. Mr. Valentine, probably best known. He was in some episodes of Family Ties, which was a big important sitcom in the late 80s. And then, but DCAU fans would probably be more familiar with his work. He played in the, speaking of Roland Daggett episode, the Feet of Clay episode, he played Raymond Bell, who was the henchman that wore the headphones in that one. He's very identifiable by that trait. That's what they made him. He had the headphones and. So yeah, Raymond Bell, he's the guy that was voiced by Mr. Valentine previously. Not a ton for him to do. I think we would be remiss not to mention that the look of the character is Dr. Sivana from Captain Marvel Shazam fame.
Absolutely.
Definitely, and as confirmed by friend of the show, Dan Reba. But yeah, not a ton for him to do. He just kind of has this wily, like sniveling, scaredy cat voice, which is kind of what that character is supposed to feel like in that position, as he's cowering before these women who are trying to drag this information out of him.
Yeah, he's fun. The little bit that he gets, he really maximizes his minutes. It's just this spineless little worm of a guy, but he's fun. It's interesting because again, you mentioned he played a different Roland Daggett thug, so it's I thought, oh, he must be in this episode too, but he's not. Like his henchmen, which may be reused from those episodes as well, or from Cat Scratch Fever, or what's the other one? Point Man Crime Alley.
Mm-hmm.
Like they might be reused from that, but for whatever reason, Headphones Guy didn't come back. So it's funny that his voice actor was in the episode and Roland Daggett was in the episode, but Headphones Guy didn't return. So, but yeah, he does a great job as just being this sniveling little coward as the chemist.
That's right. Moving on, we also had Roger Rose, who in this episode played Gilbert. He also plays Officer Wilkes. So a dual role for him in this one. DCAU fans would also know him. He played the Jaguar Shaman in the Worry Men episode.
Oh, yeah.
Who could forget? He also, I think, did some voices in Robin's Reckoning and Joker's Wild as well. Not a lot on his IMDb, recognizable things on his IMDb page. Some voice acting. He did voice some stuff in Justice League War in 2014 though. So he's done some DC animated work after that, and also voiced Captain Marvel in Marvel Ultimate Alliance. So there you go. There's a voice credit right there in the video game Ultimate Alliance. But yeah, not a ton for him to do. He gets to feign at the end that he's been hurt by Catwoman, and yeah, that's about it. Moving on from there, we'll go ahead and talk about some of our more important supporting roles. Of course, returning the late Ed Asner as Roland Daggett. Of course, Mr. Asner, probably most famous for his role in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, or maybe you know him from more modern appearances. He's the voice of the main character Carl in Up, or visually, he's Santa in Elf, for those of you who are big fans. But yeah, Mr. Asner, of course, DCAU, other than Roland Daggett, more famously known as Granny Goodness. That's right. In the Superman the Animated Series all the way up through Justice League Unlimited. So yeah, Mr. Asner, unsurprisingly, a solid performance here. He comes across as somebody with an axe to grind and somebody that's out for not only revenge, it's one of those things where this guy, despite it, he could do both. Like he was a good on-screen actor, and he had the voice that many voice actors would probably kill for to have, and the ability to communicate is really strong. I think that sequence that we mentioned where he just says that, no, I'm not going to hang you over the acid tubs with rope until it disintegrates. I'm going to shoot you with a gun and throw your body because I think there's enough acid to dissolve your bones. It's really strong. I really enjoyed it. There isn't a ton for him to do because he isn't revealed until that third act, but it's a solid performance from Mr. Asner, very unsurprisingly.
Yeah, it's good, solid work from him. Obviously, his more iconic DCAU role was in another series, but yeah, he's fun as the villain here. He's definitely got that sinister edge down. Yeah, he's gotten to show a little range over the course of his Roland Daggett tenure, being kind of just the guy pulling the strings in his first appearances to the kind of the public face of like the polite businessman. And then here in this episode where he's as he admits himself, he's down on his luck, and so he hatched this scheme to frame Catwoman. So yeah, it's fun having him back. I feel like it's one of those ones where, like, does it need to be Roland Daggett? No, but it's fun that it is, as opposed to it being, well, I guess it could have been anyone. You need somebody for the heroes to punch up, and as mentioned there, which I feel like is, we don't get that many specific callbacks to previous episodes, like in this one where they talk about the Feet of Clay and Cat Scratch Fever.
Yeah.
So there is the through line of Catwoman and him having this like sub rivalry, even though, as the DCAU wiki points out, they never actually shared a scene together because she's dealing with the evil vet and Dr. Milo and whoever in Cat Scratch Fever. But still, it's a fun little bit to have that callback in the midst of everything. So yeah, he does a good solid job once again as Mr. Daggett.
That's right. And so due to his screen time being very limited, we'll talk next about our Bruce Wayne / dream sequence Batman, late great Kevin Conroy. Not a ton for Mr. Conroy to do here. I don't even know if it's kind of fun that he has this little cameo where he has to explain away why he's not in the episode. But him joking around with Dick here is really the last happy moment that we canonically have between Batman and Robin. Unfortunately, or Bruce and Dick, as things get a little icy from here on out. But
literally, because Sub-Zero's still to come. But
that's right. So yeah, it's a nice little cameo bit, but I don't think there's it's like an incomplete grade because there's not enough to judge. Yeah. I feel like, but I guess if we were giving a judgment, I would say, yeah, he sounds like Bruce Wayne. It's a fun little bit.
Yeah, I like the dream sequence bit too. Again, very romance novel dialogue that he thanks to you.
Right.
Like it's very, it's so sultry, which we know he and Andrea Romano had a lot of fun with some of those takes that they would do. So it's a fun little bit, even though he doesn't have much to do.
That's right. And then we have our main, as I dubbed her, the anti-hero of the episode. She's the problem. It's her. It's Adrienne Barbeau as Selena Kyle and / Catwoman. Although we don't see Selena Kyle, she does get mentioned by name, Selena Kyle, by Roland Daggett at the end. But it's Catwoman, and she has a lot of screen time, a lot of conversations between her and our next couple of characters here that we'll mention. But I thought there were times in Miss Barbeau's performances in Batman the Animated Series that I wasn't necessarily sold on her performance, and this one I think, under the critical lens, holds up, as it feels like she really is able to, as you mentioned, that idea that she is taking advantage of the naivete of Batgirl, and really, like, it feels like it's a little bit over the top at times, like, yeah, oh, you're so smart, like, like almost to the point of being condescending. But the fact that Batgirl's not picking up on it, or that it doesn't register with her, it kind of adds to the performance for me. So I thought it was a pretty strong performance from Miss Barbeau.
Yeah, I think she's really fun in this episode. Like you said, so yeah, some of those lines where she's like, "No, of course I don't want to steal the statue. It belongs to the world." I think that's such a funny line, and her delivery of it is really good as well. So, yeah, I think she's fun with, like, she's kind of playing this. She's playing it pretty straight. I think when she has to kind of be threatening with the chemist, she's good there too. So she gets a little more range in her performance, a little bit more of a little bit wider of a array of emotions to display in this one. So yeah, I think she's really good. And then her kind of outsmarting things, and I do really enjoy the bit that there's like a moment where she's still trying to flatter Batgirl at the end, and then she just has to mention that she thinks Jim Corden is senile, and it just ruins things. But the way she delivers that line is quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, agreed. And then I say briefly, it's more than Ed Asner and Kevin Conroy, but less than Melissa Gilbert and Adrienne Barbeau. We have Lauren Lester as Robin, of course. Lauren Lester gets more to do in this than just wisecracking quips, which is always welcomed and appreciated. As we talked about a couple weeks ago with Dan Reba, a lot of the times he was there as someone for Batman to talk to, or someone for kids to identify with, and to, to say the funny lines, to be the comic relief, or to be the person that adds some of the dialogue in as, exposition. He isn't relegated to that role for this episode, which is kind of refreshing. He gets to be the man in charge. He's doing the behind the scenes stuff because we don't see a lot of it in front of the camera, but he's doing investigating. He's taking on the role of Batman, of not trusting the villain. He still has, as we mentioned, this very somewhat adversarial relationship with Batgirl, where he does look down on her and kind of sees her still as a unqualified participant in the crime fighting game. So we get to see a little bit more of the range, I feel like, although doesn't translate into a ton more screen time than we're used to for Robin. It is interesting at least to see, and kind of shows that in some of those other episodes where we were like maybe not digging the Robin performance as much, sometimes that strictly, as we've mentioned, is as a result of the content that he had to work with at the time, because he was relegated to a particular role that wasn't allowing him to necessarily flex those muscles or show those chops off. So I think he does a fine job in this episode, and I was pleased to see that he got to do a little bit more than what he's usually responsible for.
Yeah, I think he's, like you said, he gets his little like side investigation where he's kind of a step behind what's going on, but he's sort of piecing things together. I do think he has maybe my favorite line of the episode, which is when Batgirl is really struggling to hold Daggett up over the vat of acid, and he just walks up and goes, "Here, you've had a tough day," and then he helps her pull him up. I think his delivery of that is really good. Like I enjoyed that a bit. There's like a little, it is like a weirdly adversarial relationship that Robin and Batgirl are set up to have in this episode, but then they kind of make up by the end, I guess. So they're just argumentative by nature. So and hey, like we said, we get to see Dick and Barbara interact out of costume, which was not a regular occurrence in this series. So yeah, it's fun. He gets a little bit extra to do, and again, he's investigating on his own as opposed to being just bouncing off of Batman the whole time. So yeah, a little bit extra for him this week.
That's right. And in what would ultimately be her swan song as the Barbara Gordon Batgirl character, we have Melissa Gilbert making her final appearance as Batgirl in the DCAU before she was recast for the Sub-Zero movie, and then obviously Tara Strong takes over in the Batgirl role in the Batman adventures. But kind of bittersweet here. I know growing up, it was a bit of a stark contrast from my recollection when you listen to Mary Kay Bergman as Barbara in Sub-Zero versus the Melissa Gilbert performance that you were used to. It's kind of hard to rectify those two things as the same character. Tara Strong, because of the amount of volume that she gets and the talent I think that she has, I think it's kind of an easier adjustment once you get there. But as far as Miss Gilbert's performance here, really strong. I think she does a really fantastic job. As we said, she has a lot of dialogue and interactions with Miss Barbeau's Catwoman, and some of those bickerings with Robin, but also the fun moments where she's talking about how her dad's going to kill her and put her in jail if she doesn't ace her midterms, and how she knows that that's not an empty threat because he's the police commissioner. And so I think it's a pretty strong performance from her. She really does drive home that naive sort of nature that they're going for the character, and that the innocence that she sort of has in this particular piece for this episode. So yeah, it is somewhat bittersweet as we no longer will be hearing her in future
Yeah.
episodes. But yeah, it's a nice little, I think it's a nice little cap for the for her little run here in the original run of episodes.
Yeah, I think she's really good. I it's hard because Tara Strong is like one of the three most famous voice actors on the planet.
Sure, yeah.
So it's not as if I would ever say she doesn't do a good job as Batgirl,
hmm
but I think I just feel like Melissa Gilbert's Barbara has a little bit more personality to her.
hmm
That's just, and a lot of that comes from the voice, and maybe the super expressive round face as mentioned. But I just feel like this Batgirl feels a little bit more alive and less part of the window dressings, which I think there's a lot of characters in the new Batman Adventures that kind of feel like they're just part of the window dressing to an extent.
Sure.
Well, at least my memory of the show. I haven't gone back and watched it critically in a while.
We'll find out.
Yes, we'll find out in the coming months and years as we go over those episodes. But yeah, so I just think I feel like she's a more well-rounded person, and I associate Melissa Gilbert's voice with the more rounded version of Barbara and Batgirl that we get across these, from Heart of Steel to even her little bits in I Am the Night, and then her two adventures as Batgirl. I think she just does a great job. And so yeah, it's definitely bittersweet to say goodbye again. Not that the other women who have portrayed Barbara in this universe are bad at the job in any way, but it's just different. And I think maybe gun to my head, I prefer Melissa as the Batgirl of the three we got. But again, not a it's a good problem to have that many talented women voicing her. But yeah, I think she does a good job. Like you said, the script calls for her to be sort of almost like ridiculously naive at times. And I think, like I said, some of her dialogue in that first scene in the museum, and then again when they're meeting in front of the warehouse, and well, you have to promise, if I find out you're lying, you have to promise me that you'll let the police take you to jail. Like it's so some of it is so funny. It's played kind of for comedy to an extent, again, as we've talked about. But yeah, I think she does good. I think her kind of bickering with Lauren Lester's Robin is fun. So yeah, I think she does a really solid job all the way around. And at the end, she's still the hero ultimately, and it's not just she kind of finally stands up for herself and stops letting herself have the wool pulled over as she stands up to Catwoman at the end, even if then she lets her go. But that's not Melissa Gilbert's fault, so that won't affect my score for voice acting this week. I ended up settling on a pretty high 8 out of 10 for my voice acting score.
Yeah, I went one tick higher. I went with a 9 out of 10. I think everybody's
Nice.
just really solid and really puts in good performances from. I mean, not having a large cast certainly probably makes that the volume a little bit. It's a little less diluted, so you don't have to pay attention to some of the more ancillary characters, and you get more screen time when you're strongest voice actors. So yeah, it led to a really strong score from both of us, regardless.
Absolutely, Cal. And that will begin to wrap us up here and get us to our final scores. But wait, what's that? That's the bonus point sound. Haven't heard that in a while. It was gathering dust, but I believe it's actually me who has the bonus point this week. But yes, this week I had one extra point. It's I think if you looked at all of the times we've given a bonus point to a Batman episode, I would say like probably 75% of the time it's this, which is the title card.
Oh yes,
the Batgirl Return title card. I just think this is one of the best. It's just Batgirl swinging in front of the moon, and it's all sort of silhouetted, and it kind of everything has this sort of blue hue over it. I just love it. I think it's one of the best of the whole run. So wanted to give it the extra point here with that little shout out.
I was gonna say it's not a 1-to-1 homage, but it certainly invokes the Dark Knight Returns cover from Frank Miller. So you're taking the name on which it's somewhat based. You're giving it that homage, and it's a nice little little homage to that while it's still being its own iconic looking thing. There's no lightning in it, so you don't have the one-to-one imagery that the Dark Knight Returns cover has. But yeah, it's really really strong. It's a very memorable one, and unfortunately, as we've talked about, this is an episode with a lot of lasts, and this is the last title card, official title card that we get for the series, as this would put the bookend for all of those. So the good news is that this opens up a lot of bonus episodes for top 5. As we already talked about, theme songs, like coming up with our favorite 5 theme songs from this run. Our 5 favorite title cards could be a bonus episode that we talk about in the future here. Who knows? 5 favorite. I don't know. But yeah, so this opens up a lot of doors for us. So it's exciting and certainly deserving of that bonus point.
Absolutely. So with that out of the way, that will now bring us to our final scores. And with my 1 extra point, tallying everything up, I settle on a 30 out of 40 for this episode.
Yeah, and we were just a point off in a couple of categories here. So you made up for that 1 point and took the lead, but otherwise we would have finished with the exact same score of 29 out of 40, which is what my score was.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, as far as rewatchability, I don't know.
I think it gets a 1 thumb because of it's tied to 2 other episodes.
Okay.
So now, could you watch those episodes without watching this episode? Yes. But it's sort of the evolution of the Batgirl character, because the last time we saw Batgirl was in the Shadow of the Bat episode, right? We haven't seen her since then. So if you're wondering kind of where she's been from the time you go to the New Batman Adventures to here, it's like, did anything happen? She's just on the team now? Like, what happened? So
right.
Yeah, I think it's important because if you're trying to tell the Batgirl story, I think that the character changes a little bit from the time here and then when we see her next. I don't know if it was intentional or just a decision that they made or it just happened that way, but she certainly seems less naive, more jaded, more serious in the New Batman Adventures. Yeah, certainly less childlike. So, yeah, I think that's important. I think it's also important because it's the last episode in production order, so it's the finale essentially to the show. But overall, if you skip it, will you miss out on anything in the grand scheme of things? No. Roland Daggett is never seen again. It's never meant. This episode is never really mentioned or played upon again, even when Catwoman returns. So, yeah, I'd say it's like a 1 thumb up for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you really want to stretch, you can say that Bruce tells Dick to watch out for Selina's mind games, and then later on, and you scratch my back. That's it's a more direct. He's put in the crosshairs a little bit.
It's a direct assault.
That's right. So we can, if you really want to stretch there's your connection to future episodes as well as the past episodes that you pointed out. So yeah, I think I'm fine with 1 thumb up. And with that out of the way, Cal, that will begin to wrap us up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening, whether you do so on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or on the aforementioned Pod Tower YouTube channel. We do thank you. Best, easiest way to support us, if you like the show, is to subscribe to us wherever you listen to us. Give us 5 stars. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, and if it's a 5-star review, we will actually send you a little gift if you're living in the US. So we appreciate people that do that. I know it takes a little extra time, but it does really help us out. That's a good free way to support us. Another good free way is, of course, to follow us on our socials at DCAU Review on Instagram, on Twitter /X, and even on Threads still technically. So we're there sometimes. Especially now, as we mentioned, the clutch thing that Instagram lets you post stuff directly to Threads while you're posting it to Instagram. That's really saved us a step there. But yes, you can follow us on there. Give us your thoughts on this episode and anything else that we've covered, things you'd like to hear us cover in the future. Just give us a follow there. That's a great way to help us. If you'd like to support us in a more direct monetary fashion, there are a couple of ways to do that available in the show notes. There's a link to our store where you can pick up a hat or a shirt or a mug, and there's also a donate button down there as well. We have a few people that donate monthly, which is greatly appreciated by myself and Cal. Helps makes the whole process go a little smoother, and we appreciate that as well. And Cal, as we begin to wrap up this month and we look towards the next, given that this is the first time, as we pointed out, that we finished one of these seminal main DCAU series, I thought we kind of talked about this off the air. We thought before we move on to another one of the shows, as we normally do at the start of a new month, let's hang around in old timey Gotham one more week, and maybe do a little bit of a series overview next week, and recap our highest and maybe our lowest rated episodes of the series that started it all.
That's right, Liam. We're going to look back, man, over 7 years. Of course, not 7 years worth of episodes, but over 7 years. We've covered all 85 of these episodes. So that means the original reason why we started this podcast was to figure out what were the episodes that we liked. Did they match up with the ones that all of those listicles that came out on the 25-year anniversary of this show's debut? Were they right? Were they? Did we agree with them? Were they wildly off base? And next week is when we find out if do we agree with some of these listicles or not that all came out 7 years ago. So the answer to a 7-year-long journey will be found out next week as we check out our top 5 and bottom 5 episodes score-wise. Again, this will be score-wise and not necessarily whether or not we liked them or not and how we liked them. We'll have to come up with some tiebreakers too, because there's definitely going to be some tiebreakers.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of like 36s and 37s in there that we're going to have to figure out. Maybe if both of us gave it a higher score, then that one edges it out.
I think that probably makes sense. So we'll both have our top 5s listed, ready to go. It's going to be a interesting look back as we put a nice little bow on Batman the Animated Series for now.
That's right. We, as mentioned, we have some ideas of how we might be able to revisit this original series a few more times. Obviously, we have our character spotlights and our Meta Brawl series that we've been toying with this past couple of years. So definitely will not be the last time we talk about these episodes. But as far as our full scored reviews, this is the end of the road for BTAS. So excited to look back at the whole series, and also because, as we have probably mentioned before, we have a tendency to forget everything we say as soon as the recording stops. So it'll actually be very exciting for both me and Cal, I think, to find out what our highest rated episodes are, because I'm not really sure off the top of my head. So I think I have some ideas, but I wonder if there's any surprises that we'll get when we are compiling our lists in the next week before we bring that episode to you next Saturday. Can't wait. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
We'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.